Welcome to part 2 of the AMS Pathfinder hacks. This is part 2 in a series of 5. This particular video will demonstrate how to bend a fairly typical part, or in some cases a part that you don't have any choice to do this on necessarily, to allow you to do that. And the particular thing is to clamp a hem that's already bent and bend the bend that's next to it. So in this particular part, to bend that bend with that 1/2 inch in the machine. And if you'll notice on this particular part, it'll actually take out any major rotations. Everything that you'll be able to do will be with just flip forwards. I've already drawn the part. It's nothing real major or nothing real special. 2 inches, 3.5. And I've already sequenced this part, and it'll make a little bit more sense once you see how I've sequenced it. The machine doesn't come up with it automatically, so this is what I've come up with. So you'll do your hem, close the hem, and you'll do your 90, so it's basically pushing it out, you're bending the 90, and then you're flipping it forward to do the drip. There's some particular profiles where this is pretty much necessary. For example, like an offset corner, like if you're doing panels, or like an inside or outside corner or trim for like an R-type panel where it has to be offset. This is pretty much a necessity. So this has been sequenced, so we'll hit the check mark. And once we get to here, we'll do our standard compensations for bending a hem. So it'll open up so I can push it in without having to hit the pedal. It'll offset it so it's not putting any dimples in it. It's going to bend the 90-degree normal. And then when I get to here, what I'm going to do, and this is kind of particular to certain machines, it's not as big of a deal on other machines, I wouldn't imagine, but I'm bending 24 gauge steel, and on a Schechtel, the particular back gauge we have has the cutouts in the lower bed. So if I were to clamp down on this like it were 24 gauge steel, they would put dimples, and it would also have a hard time clamping down on it because it's two thicknesses. You know, I've only come down when I close the hem to 0.19 inches. So what I want to do is, first off, I want to change the clamp closed position. That will mean that when it comes down, I don't want it to clamp too hard on the piece. So I'm going to go on this profile 0.2 inches. And it's going to be a little bit different depending on what material you're using, but in this case, my clamp closed position for my hem was 0.19. So 0.2 should give me just enough pressure to keep it in the machine without moving it, but also not too much pressure to put any dimples in it. So I've got that clamp closed position to 0.2, and because the clamping beam isn't coming down as far, I need to add some angle to it. So in this, what I found is that anywhere between 10 and 15 degrees will get you to where you need to be, and that's because if you think about the way the part's sitting in there, it's clamped on this part of it, and this part will be above your bending beam. So the bending beam is going to start moving, and it'll move about 10 degrees before it even contacts the metal. And that 10 degrees plus or minus, depending on what you're bending, obviously, will allow you to get your 45 degrees or your 135 degrees, depending on your setup. And this is useful in a lot of situations if you're doing, like in this particular situation, it saved any rotations or turns other than the flip forward, so you're not having to flop the piece all the way over. Saves time, saves your arms, saves your back. Some situations it's necessary. Like I said, if you're doing offset outside or inside corners, or rake for R panels or any type of offsets, it works well if you're doing like hook Eve or style D with a small face where you're going to have to come down. This also works if you're doing a part where it's not right on the hem isn't, if you're not bending the drip on the hem. Say you're bending something that's up to 2 inches, because your clamping beam is 2 inches. So anywhere along here that's less than 2, if you're less than 2 from here on, you're going to run into the same situation. So you can do that compensation, come in here and have your clamping close position be just a little bit wider than what your hem close was, and then make sure that you have a number of degrees. If you see anywhere, see if I were to bend this, it would still want to clamp and put dimples in there, or it might put a crease in it because it's coming down. So anyway, that's how to keep any dimples from getting in your drip edge or from your hemmed edge. And that's it for part 2.